What's going on, everyone? This is Kurt coming back to you for the Lionshare Poker Academy, and today we are hopefully going to finish this $150 500K guarantee tournament that I managed to finish second in. We've already done the first two parts, going through the beginning to final stages, and this is going to be starting at the first hand at the final table. And what I'm going to do here is actually, so in the previous videos, I just showed you guys every hand that ended up seeing a flop. And on this video, I want to show you every hand that we end up playing, because we're probably going to see some interesting pre-flop decisions being made that will certainly differ from the way we're playing our hands in the beginning to middle stages of the tournament. So I just want to make sure that you guys get to see every single hand that was played. And just real quickly, I'm just going to show you guys the payouts via pocket fives. Again, we did manage to finish in second place, but we're going to see a pretty epic punt here at the final table, and you guys are going to see just how much money has been lit on fire. You guys can see that ninth place is going to get just short of $6,000, and the winner is going to make just short of $60,000. So very big money pay jumps between ninth place and first place. So yeah, on that note, we're just going to get right into it. So I'm not going to end up playing this hand. Pocket fours, even if this folded to us, we'd probably be folding. These hands do not play very well in early position when there are shallow stacks out there. Queen jack as well. I guess what I should say at first is that we have a pretty big chip leader to our left here. And this essentially gives us the worst seat at the table because he has position on us, and he's going to make our lives pretty miserable, as well as everybody else's. We are third in chips to start, it would appear. This guy being second in chips right here. So he also has to be fairly tight with this player in position as well. So especially when there's all these other shorter stacks out there and the pay jumps are so big, the like second, third, and fourth in chips are going to be incentivized to play pretty tight, especially when this player has yet to act. So yeah, on that note, I guess we'll get right back into it. And I believe this is the first hand we ended up playing. I'm going to be using a 100% limp strategy versus the chip leader here. And even if he ended up isolating, I still think that I would just be calling. It might look tight, but again, we are very disincentivized to be playing super bloated pots, and my 3-bet range is going to be pretty polarized here from being like, the bottom of my range. I guess we can 3-bet hands like ace-deuce suited and then pocket aces for value, but bottom line is we are just going to be defending a large part of our range. We're very disincentivized to play bloated pots when there are so many short stacks around. So interesting to note, I would say there anyway. And on this board, we can probably do some stabbing, but again, I think the deeper we get, the less we want to be c-betting on these monotone flops. And then again, of course, we still want to be playing tight versus this player here. And we have a hand that can, on most runouts, pretty easily just check call, and check raise. We end up making a boat or just end up heroing. Here again, I don't think there's much reason for us to be raising. I think we're either way ahead or way behind, and yes, we could very well have the best hand here, but again, it's nice to be able to both disguise the strength of our hand and keep the pot as small as possible. I'm still not like super thrilled about getting in a lot of money on this flop here, even though we have likely the absolute nuts. On this turn, if he bets, we obviously wouldn't be able to fold, especially being able to improve to a full house. This is essentially the worst run out we're going to get. I considered making a block bet here at first because he's still going to have some queen X, maybe some hands like 10-8 himself that he ended up betting the flop with. And then we also kind of set our price if he has, like, let's say the 9 of clubs. And we probably end up check calling if he ends up betting. But either way, if he just has a hand like the 9 of clubs or the 8 of clubs, and we just make a tiny block bet here, we kind of set our price on the river because he's likely not going to raise with those hands. But I roll a check here anyway, just thinking that his range is still like pretty wide. So I think our hand probably makes a little bit more money checking to potentially pick up bluffs as opposed to value betting small here and getting called by worse. So yeah, he just checks back again. And I was really surprised to see that he had 2 clubs here. I don't mind him checking back the turn. I think that's fine, but I still think he probably has a street of value. I'm going to have a lot of, let's say, just spare queen X here, basically. I'm going to have some like 10-5 of diamonds here that's going to be in a tough spot. So I think he probably still has a value bet here on the river. But still pretty happy that he just checked back. We essentially lost the minimum when we had set to a flush. A lot of money could have gone in on the flop here, and things could have got really interesting on turns of rivers. But we did manage to lose a minimum there. Definitely an interesting spot. I know I probably spent a little too much time on that one, but I think that one was certainly worth discussion. And I remember I even contemplated folding this spot here. I think it's probably a little too strong to end up folding. And if this guy ends up folding, then these players still are going to be playing fairly tight against my opening range here. I'm still going to be much tighter from this position than I would normally be. And he calls in the big blind. On the flop, I think we can still bet pretty aggressively. We are at a 3x disadvantage. He's probably going to be defending most of his suited 3x, and we really only have ace-3 suited and pocket queens for the nuts here. I don't think we open pocket threes here either, but that being said, he's still going to have just like a lot of random trash that he's not going to be able to defend, even versus a small bet. So I think I'm just going to bet really small with my entire range. And he check calls. He can definitely be check calling worse hands. Heart's obviously a really bad turn. He can have lots of flushes. We also don't block any of those. So I think we're probably just in showdown mode. And on the river, I don't know if I rolled to potentially bluff this hand. I think he's going to have like a lot of either like Queen X that is just checking back here, or potentially, let's say if he had like King 9 with a heart that didn't want to fold versus a 20% pot C bet. That he could definitely have. So I think this hand might be able to bluff, but probably a little too high up in my range. I haven't run this hand yet. Maybe I will at some point, but I did consider bluffing, but I ended up rolling a low number in game, I believe. And luckily I did, because he ended up having the nut flush here. So, and fine play by him as well. He's going to allow me to bluff when I have worse hands than this one. Say like if I open 10-9 of diamonds here, King 9 of diamonds, stuff like that, I'm probably going to want to be bluffing here on the river. So it's fine for him to be checking out a frequency. He can definitely bet as well though. But luckily we avoided losing some more money. And I guess, I mean, I don't think this hand is that close anyway, but essentially we are going to need to defend our big blind a little bit tighter, especially versus the shorter stack opens. Like, yeah, he's opening in late position, but he's, again, everybody at the final table is going to be incentivized to play even tighter pre-flop than they normally would. So that means we have to tighten up with our defense range as well. And we probably would have opened if that folded to us. And if this folded to us, it would be close as well. But again, I think we still want to be fairly tight with this guy right here. So I guess we just kind of chilled out for the first part of the final table. We haven't really been involved in many hands outside of that pocket jacks hand. Again, I'm going to be limping my entire range here. And versus an ISO, I mean, this hand actually makes a pretty good limp jam, but it's just such a massive disaster. Even if he calls us with like ace king, like, you know, we have the best hand, but we are definitely not happy about it with all these other short stacks at the tables and these pay jumps being so big. So we're just kind of at his mercy, and we have to play passively to ensure that we don't end up getting coolered. And this hand's going to play fairly easily anyway, I believe. I believe he can probably bet his entire range on this flop, and I think this size is good as well. That being said, we can never fold any kind of pair here, even a lot of ace highs. We're going to have to defend some backdoor hearts and some really like unnatural stuff. We're going to defend even tighter than normal, again, for just because he's really allowed to take advantage of his position. And on the turn, I don't think we get any lead here. The interesting part comes here on with his turn size though. I don't think this turn size is a thing. I think he needs to start polarizing his bet sizes once he starts betting on the turn. Essentially, when you are looking to bet turns, you're just continuing with your strongest hands and your strongest draws. And in turn, that means you should be polarizing your bet sizes a little more to at least like 2/3 or bigger in the spot. So when he bets like really small here, I think it's kind of a disaster if we just check call and then the river happens to go check check and we just let him show down something that's, you know, it's kind of like a marginal hand. Because what this is telling me is like he has some sort of value, but he doesn't want to bet too big for it. So normally I would roll in a situation like this, but with him kind of telling me what his range is. It's pretty mediocre, and there's a very good chance that it just goes check check on the river, and we miss out on a chance to put a lot of money in here when we have essentially the nuts. I'm just gonna pure raise in the spot, and he ends up calling, and then on the river, I think. Is where it gets really interesting. Again, I haven't run this hand myself, but I think we have two options here. I think this hand can both block bet, and I think it can both jam. Usually when these flushes complete on the river, we can start introducing some block sizes. And that's mainly so we have our opponent call with essentially not allow him to fold like hands that are really close as a call. So I think we can have two sizes with this. I remember I wanted to jam and game, but then I kind of changed my mind at first because essentially what I was saying on the turn is that I think he has like some sort of value, but nothing that's super strong. And in that case, I want to do my best to ensure that I'm going to get some chips. So maybe he ends up calling a jam. Who knows? But I know there's probably a pretty good chance that he never folds if we just make it like 700K here. So even though in theory jam would be a thing, I thought the most optimal play would just be to block here. Then we allow him to easily call with some King X here. Maybe if he has like, even like pocket jacks with the spade, something like that. And then he's probably going to jam flushes too if he gets here. So I don't think we end up losing value if he has a flush in this spot. But anyway, he ends up calling. And he has aces with the spade, which is kind of crazy that he has a hand this good in these positions. So, but essentially what I was asking myself is I was saying, oh, yeah, like he has a really good bluff catcher. Like he bluffs the flushes. That's going to be a big part of my semi-bluffing range on the turn. And he blocks me having flushes with the ace of spades here. But even if I jam like my whole stack here and I have aces in his shoes, for one, I'm thinking that not many people are bluffing the spot. And for two, it's just such a disaster if you call and you're wrong because you can still just like fold and still have a pretty commanding chip lead over the tournament right now. So yeah, I was pretty happy overall with the way I played this. I'm probably going to run this at some point just to see what the most optimal play was, but I think as things went in game, I'm pretty happy with the way that I played this hand. And that's essentially like a 15 big shove, so we can't call with sixes. Again, this would be close if it folded to us, but we probably still have to play a little bit tighter with the chip leader on our left. Unfortunately, no action with kings. And again, limping range here. I think we can better check. I think checking probably makes the most amount of sense. And when he bets bigger here with no sort of backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, I'm just going to let it go. I'm looking for... Okay, so this is the hand. When I was telling you about the massive ICM punt here, so I'm just going to show you guys this hand here. So this guy ended up taking the chip lead, and this guy is second in chips pretty... And with me being third in chips, he still has a fair amount more than me, and then just a bunch of short stacks here. So this range in general has to be like super, super polarized, especially if he's 3-betting second in chips. Like for value, he should essentially have like aces and then just like mix some 3-bets with some weak suited aces here, basically. So his range should be like super polarized versus this player here. He bets pretty big, which the size is probably okay in theory. This deep stacked on these lower boards, I think you usually like to use bigger sizes. I think with the final table dynamic, that smaller sizes in general make a little more sense. And this guy check calls. This is actually like a really bad turn card for this player. This range should include a lot of suited hands, like a lot of king queen suited, king jack suited, ace jack suited, things of that nature. So when the diamond completes here on the turn, I'd say this is advantage out of position. Also, I don't know how much 8x he's calling with, but I don't think there's much 8x in this 3-betting range. So I believe this player also has an 8x advantage here as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some lead from this player. But as played, he ends up checking. And this guy just ends up ripping, which I do not think is a very good size. I guess I won't get too far into that. But essentially, this is such a bad card that if he does continue, I think it should just be like smaller sizes and then kind of reevaluate depending on how your opponent acts. But anyway, he jams, and this this might be fine with like, let's say if he has like pocket jacks with a diamond here, which I don't even think should be in his three betting range, but I guess this wouldn't be like a bad play. I also think you could check a hand like that too though. But anyway, he ends up jamming, and this guy actually turned the flush here, but this guy has quads, and this guy who was second in chips, who was chip leader not that long ago, is completely going out of line here, three betting this player. And I think this guy played his hand perfectly as well. I mean, I would do the exact same thing. So this guy just made this massive ICM punt where, how many people are at this final table? Was it nine hand, 2, 4, 6? Yeah, so nine handed. So this guy was chip leader and a pretty big chip leader, and ended up taking eighth place. So he essentially, assured himself like a top three position, and instead he just ends up cashing for 7,700. So this is one of the biggest ICM punts that I had encountered in quite a while. So essentially now that this guy has all the chips and he's such a massive chip leader, and there's all these other shorties, essentially whenever this guy folds, I can act as I'm the chip leader, so I can be pretty aggressive. And then I just immediately get punished, but that's fine. Pocket seven's going to be in easy open here. And on this board, I think we can either bet or check. I think betting makes a little bit of sense because we get to bet out some potential equity. If he's calling with a hand like Jack 10 of hearts, it's probably not even going to call versus a small bet. But also his range should be fairly tight when he's just flatting my open here. So that being said, I might be doing a little bit more checking than I would normally do because this range is going to be fairly tight. And even with a spade, I just ended up folding. This seems kind of tight, but again, that goes back to me believing that his flatting range is going to be tighter than normal. And I think I can just pick my spots a little bit better here. And folding the four is mainly because we are not very incentivized to be playing pots with this guy in the big blind. And it's going to be an easy open here. Easy fold versus open from the chip leader. And when we have an easy open here with King 8, these guys are 19 and 24 bigs effective. And this guy punishes us again. Queen 7, not doing it. So for chips, I think this would be a call. But again, this we are very disincentivized to be calling all-ins at final tables, mainly because if I end up like losing this pot, I lose half my stack and some good leverage that I have in this tournament right now. And every call, you just have to be so much more cautious about, especially at a final table like this where pay jumps are so massive. So even though like for chips, this is probably a call with ICM and how tight this guy's jamming range should be, I would say this would be a pretty massive ICM punt to be calling here. Also a hand I'd like to check out on ICMizer just to see what ICMizer suggests we should be called, like what our minimum call range should be there. Yeah, got to fold here. He should be jamming pretty aggressively as well. Close to any two, I would say, in that spot. And I thought this was close. Versus a 2.5x, I would say this is pretty bottom of my range. I would fold 9-8 off in this spot. And I basically was saying, okay, if he makes it 2x, I think I can defend a little bit tighter, or like this hand would be fine. But for 2.5, it's like a little too much. And this, again, this might be tight, but I think it's fine for us to be playing a little tight here. We are pretty disincentivized to be taking thin spots, especially another thing that I mentioned is I didn't think they were very strong players at this table, so I'm not really looking to take thin spots. I think I'm going to be able to select pretty well. This is obviously an easy jam. He folds. He's going to be opening super wide there. Oh, so I remember this hand. So this hand kind of sucks, but I think it plays itself. We are third in chips with 18 big blinds. These two players here both have 14. So again, I'm still trying to play tight, and because we are really incentivized to not take very thin spots, especially as the short stacks here. Well, there's three of us. But that being said, I think this hand really sucks as like a limp call versus a jam, because he can essentially like like just jam like 8-7 off, and I call and I'm in a coin flip, and that really sucks when I can just jam and he would fold. Also, even though he has a fair amount of chips, he's not going to be calling like super wide in this spot because he's also disincentivized to take thin like all in pre spots because he can just fold and like open very aggressively when this player is not yet to act, and we just have to be very tight when we're also short. So I think this hand is just a pretty clear fist pump jam, although it does seem kind of gross. And he actually snapped me with the pocket eights, and we get very lucky in this spot to end up sucking out here. I think this is just an absolute cooler, like nothing that can really be done here. I think his hand is still going to be a pretty easy call in this spot as well. So yeah, we get pretty lucky there, of course. And with 14 and 32 bigs, I think we just open here. Would have opened if this folded to us. So this is kind of, I remember this hand, and this seems insane, of course. But with these two players both having 10 bigs and this guy having 20 bigs, like I can open and this guy can jam essentially like any two cards into me, and then I can probably only defend like, I don't know, maybe pocket jacks, ace king in the spot, and I just have to fold everything else. And again, I'm just kind of disincentivized to be playing when this guy's in the big blind, and all these guys are so short here. So this might be a little bit overdoing it, but I definitely understand why I folded here, and I'm kind of okay with it. Like, I essentially had to be the tightest one at the table if this guy has yet to open yet, because I have the most to lose, essentially. Like, my chip stack next to this guy is worth more than these three players, and they're all, like, really short here. So I'm really, like, hoping that these guys bust and I can ladder up here. And definitely don't want to be playing pots with a guy who has me covered. Oh, I think I might have completed there. Let's go back to that. Yeah, I completed. I don't know what this limping range is here off of 9 bigs. It shouldn't really be anything. So I'm definitely not continuing versus a large bet there with bottom pair. And I remember I think I jammed here, which I don't hate. It is kind of like, it might be just a little too strong. With ace king suited, I would definitely just open here. But I'm kind of okay with the jam. Essentially, what I said to myself is like, okay, if I end up jamming, this guy probably folds like even pocket eights, pocket nines with these two guys being so short. Maybe he doesn't fold nines, but definitely like eights and sevens. And then if I just open here, he jams those hands, and then I have to call. And then essentially, if I lose that hand, I'm basically short stacked with these guys. So I just decided to jam. It might be a little too strong, but I really don't hate it with the way the stack sizes are set up here. Again, not going to be playing with this guy in the big blind unless I have a very good hand. And going to fold with the ace deuce here. I'm not sure what our minimum ace would be to call off here. I'd probably say ace 10 off, maybe ace 9, ace 8 suited, things like that for only 7 bigs. Kind of interested to see what an ICM push fold chart would say. And here, I wouldn't hate a jam here, honestly, because again, this guy has to call like super tight in these spots with these two guys being so short. But these suited hands, I guess I'm okay with like limping here. And he just min raises, which I don't think is a thing here. There's a possibility we could get some lead on this flop, but I end up just checking. I would also expect him to check this board a lot. I don't think this board is very good for an isolating range. Like, this range should be a lot of like broadways, and my limp call range should be a lot of like low suited connectors and you know, essentially hands like exactly what I have. So I'd expect not many bets here. That being said, versus a bet, I could roll some check raise here, but just trying to keep the pot small. I think we have some decent backdoors with the gut shot straight and the backdoor flush draw, so I'm really just trying to keep pot small. And when he bets a small on the turn, like, again, this really sucks. And we do block hands like 10-8, 10-9 if he's ever isolating those hands. But for the price he's giving us, and with the chance for us to make a straight on the river, I just don't think that we can fold yet. And luckily, he just checks back on the queen, and he just has the jack 3 off, which I think is pretty poor overall. I guess I won't get too much into that, but we take the gift, and he essentially tells us what caliber of player he is by that hand. And here, I think we just end up jamming. The deepest stack is 13 big blinds. And we do end up getting called by the same hand. That's probably like kind of close on his pot, but I guess it's fine. He is the shortest stack, so I guess he gets to call a little bit tighter or a little bit more aggressively than everybody else. And we definitely have to call here. This hand is way too strong to be folding. And unfortunately, he runs out the straight. And so I took a bet on this hand. So essentially, if we lose the pot, we are down to 4.3 mil, I think, which is still going to be third in chips. So it's not like a massive disaster if I call here and I end up losing. I also think at 7 big blinds, he's shoving worse ace X's here. So the chances that we have this player dominated are pretty decent. So I thought this was like just close enough. I think ace 8 would have been pretty close, and ace 10 is a pretty easy call here. So this was kind of right on the threshold. The thing that I repeat constantly, though, is when I think spots are close, I normally just end up folding, and spots don't get much closer than this when the pay jump implications are just so massive. So maybe if I use my own thought process, I should be folding here, since I think this is like like right on the threshold of where I would call or fold. So yeah, maybe looking back at it, I don't like the call, and I'm definitely not being results oriented on the hand. I think I still would go with ace 10 here. I haven't run this hand yet, so maybe I'll check this out and post it in Discord if you guys want to check out what our ICMizer is going to say in this spot. But we end up getting super lucky here. We did end up flipping against this guy, but then this guy obviously wakes up with pocket queens. This guy had ended up folding. We would have jammed the ace 9. He would have snapped with the queens anyway. So I think that the money gets in more often than not anyway. We just happen to get super lucky in the spot. So yeah, I do think this spot is really close. This guy waking up with a hand is just kind of a cooler. But to see him having like 2 8s with 7 bigs here, I'm like, maybe he is shoving a little bit tighter than I thought, or maybe he just woke up with a super good hand here. But anyway, we get super lucky and knock out 2 players at the same time. And I think we can still open here. And we have to fold versus jam. Just going to check back. Definitely not trying to blow pots with marginal hands, even in position, versus chip leader here when this guy is quite a bit shorter. And just going to fold. And this was kind of close. Like, I think there's a chance we could either call or 3-bet, but yeah, I'm just going to end up folding here. Again, I do think it's really close, so that was kind of going back to what I was saying before. I'm kind of okay with it. I don't know what my charts say. I'll have to check that out as well. Easy fold here. Oh, so I guess we'll go back to that one because these guys, this guy ends up knocking this player out. And so he opens here, which I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he should just be limping pure. And if he is raising, he's raising like a super polarized range, which means he should be using a large size. I would probably go like 3.5 here, but it's not a big deal. In general, I would just be doing a lot of limping here. I like to check. This board's probably not very good for his pre-flop opening range. Definitely better for his flatting range. And we see a bet and a check call. There's a chance he could do some leading on this card. I do think he still gets to check call with some ace highs here that this player is not going to have a ton of. But I think checking is pretty standard as well. So he throws in the small check raise and big blind calls. And throws in a block bet on the river. I'm not sure if this is a thing. It might be. And then I remember this guy, I don't think he took that much time to jam here. Or maybe he took a little bit of time to jam here, and this guy ended up calling pretty quickly. And we see ace 8 here, which just like snap called versus the raise. But this is also super surprising too, to see the chip leader just call here with ace king when this guy is opening. Like, this hand should absolutely be 3-bet, if not 3-bet jammed in this spot. So... but also the kind of the sick thing about what this guy does is he raises the river for value and gets called by worse. So like, I think both equally like head scratching play pre-flop and both kind of like gangster play post-flop to still get this guy to stack off with just one pair for like a pretty massive pot here. So yeah, obviously super happy to see this. I actually threw up the deal button as this hand was going on, I remember, and then these two guys just end up busting. So yeah, that was pretty sweet to see. Ended up making it to heads up. We're at about 30 minutes right now. I'm going to try to get through this. I think there's a fair amount of hands that we end up playing heads up. So maybe I'll just do a separate section on the heads up play if you guys want to see that. What I can show you, well, there's just so many hands to play here. So if you guys want to see the heads up, we can just go over that because this does last a fair amount of time. So I think I'm just okay with cutting the video here and taking your questions about what you guys have seen at the final table here so far. Also, if you'd like for me to check out the charts for some of the pre-flop decisions that were made, or to run some hands through the solver, which I have yet to do at this final table, just let me know which hands you guys want to see the work done for, and I'll be happy to do that as well. I might actually just do a separate video of some of the interesting hands that we ended up playing here, and just do a separate video showing the charts from some of the pre-flop decisions and some of the post-flop stuff that we ended up getting ourselves into, and yeah, just make a whole separate video of that, and then we can complete this series with the heads up play. So yeah, just going to cut the video here and bring you guys the fourth part, hopefully sometime pretty soon. So just want to say thank you again for your continued support, and this has been Kurt for the Lionshare Poker Academy, signing out.